Uh, Before I start, let me give a one-slide introduction. This is a do-it-yourself guide of how to become a grocer. Uh, when I passed out from IIM Bangalore in 1988, if somebody had told me that one day I would be selling fruits and vegetables and provisions for a living, I would have said, not over my dead body. And if the same person had told me that you would be glad that you did that, I would never have believed him. But it so happened that, what started as a career in information technology eventually came down to the, let me call the root of selling fruits and vegetables, provisions, what makes for daily living. And this happened because we started with the vision of building an online e-commerce business, FabMart, and we thought we were a couple of years ahead of the time, which we thought was a good thing. It's only now we realize that we were almost a decade ahead of time. And we started selling almost everything. We used to sell books, music, and we also introduced online grocery. And surprisingly, in 1999, when this was the days of dial-up and broadband was just coming into India, we were very surprised with the kind of response we got to online grocery. In fact, it was the most successful category of all the categories we had selling online in 1999, selling online grocery in India. Most people don't believe this. And so that memory sort of stayed with us when this entire dot-com business imploded and one fine day disappeared, the investors disappeared, businesses disappeared, employees disappeared, and life as we knew changed dramatically overnight. We decided to pivot and we said, the big opportunity was let's get into offline retail because we saw retail as the next big thing in India. There were not too many incumbents. Grocery retail was largely untouched. And we felt that was a huge opportunity. So with about $500,000 in the bank, we said, let's launch a grocery retail chain. And it is something I wouldn't advise anybody to do, and not now, after having been through this experience. $500,000 for launching a retail business is very, very little. And so a lot of trials and tribulations later, fortunately for us, we were at the right time. The product fit was there. And the customers loved our stores, they loved our service, they loved the product. And I think, so the chain really exploded. We grew to about 200 plus stores in 2.5 years. We're in 4 states, had 6,000 people, and we were visible just about everywhere. And we were profitable, which is a bit of an oxymoron in India today. Retail and profitability don't go hand in hand, like e-commerce and profitability, and airlines and profitability. So there's a similar theme in all these businesses, and I'll come back to revisit some of these later. But one thing I realized, we realized that, it was great fun building that business, and we eventually exit the business because we realized that retail is a very capital-hungry business. You need to continuously keep pumping in capital, especially if you need to grow it, and if you need to grow it fast. And the Indian market was at a stage where you needed to grow 100% every year. And so the kind of capital requirements that we had, which you visualized, we realized there was just not, we would be spending a lot of our time really just organizing capital rather than doing anything else. 3 years later, we met Ganesh, who's going to be the next speaker, and he very enthusiastically, sort of expounded, saying, "You guys should go back to grocery." And I said, "Are you crazy? Why would we go back to grocery again?" He says, "No, grocery retail and e-grocery particularly is probably the largest opportunity in India. Grocery is one of the biggest markets, and you had a good experience with that 10 years back. So there's no reason now, when the internet is booming, that you should not go back and sell online grocery." So after a lot of hemming and hawing, we decided that we will jump into it again. BigBasket.com was born. We launched in December 2011, have grown consistently at 40% month on month ever since, and are in now 3 cities, Bangalore, Bombay, and Hyderabad. We have about 500 people, will be 1,000 people by September, probably 6,000 in the next 2 years. And I can see a similar pattern getting repeated. But the interesting thing, I don't want to dwell too much on my personal experience, but more on what I have witnessed as an entrepreneur over the last decade in India, is that I am actually a very great believer in the Indian story. I keep hearing this again and again, Indian press, foreign press, entrepreneurs themselves, saying India is a very difficult market to operate in. Opportunities are less. It's tough to get exits. It's difficult to raise capital. It's impossible to raise capital. It's not difficult. In spite of all that, it's probably the best market in the world today to build a business in. In fact, people talk about the risk of being an entrepreneur. Actually, we are at a very strange confluence of events or circumstances in India where today it is far more riskier for an educated, qualified, and talented young man to take a job than to become an entrepreneur. And I can expound on this for hours together, so I won't get into that right now. But I thought what I would do is, take a couple of learnings that I've gleaned about what it takes to build a business in India. From my perspective, which is building a consumer-facing business in the country, and share that with you, and hopefully some of it strikes a chord. One, this is our sales growth over the last 12 months that we've been operating in Bangalore. And one of the things that I realized that the Indian market has a nasty tendency to surprise you. When you think the market is, we thought e-grocery, people will buy books and music. So even while we went into it, even though we had a good experience before, we were very scared, saying, do you think people will really cotton onto it? Will it take time? And we were just amazed. Our challenge over the last 12 months has been to build capacity ahead of demand. And we're still not ahead of demand. And it takes a lot. So therefore, we realized one of the key things, and this is something which we realized even the last time around, is that you need to build for scale. Build for scale does not mean investing ahead of the curve. It means investing on the curve. And I think that's a very vital difference, because a lot of entrepreneurs believe that if you need to build for scale, you need to put in the money before. You need to have all your CTO, your CMO, your CFO, all the positions filled in. You need to have all the employees in place. That is not true. To give you a quick example, we moved from a 3,000 square feet warehouse to a 6,000 square feet warehouse about 2 months back. 6 months from now, we'll move to a 20,000 square feet warehouse. And we're already in the process of figuring out how to do that. 1.5 years from there, we'll move to a 40, 50,000 square feet warehouse in Bangalore. And this is not something which we don't know is going to happen. So it's not that we don't have the capital in the bank today. Fortunately for us, somebody came and gave us money, and we have the capital to actually just move from a 3,000 square feet warehouse to a 40,000 square feet warehouse. But it does not make business sense. And particularly in India, and this will keep coming back again and again, it is very easy to take international ideas and replicate them, but very difficult to make them profitable. And that is the challenge that you have in the Indian context, that when you take international ideas, make sure that you Indianize them. Make sure that you understand the reality of the situation. Make sure that you stay on the curve. Don't invest ahead of the curve, because that's the surest way of running ahead of yourself and killing your business. The second thing, I think Sanjeev also spoke about this at length, but I want to bring a different perspective to this. We've realized that it's impossible to hire in India. This nation of 1 billion people disappears when you go out to recruit. And I don't know where they disappear to, but you just can't find people, experienced or inexperienced. And it's been such a challenge. Our biggest problem to building capacity is we need more people to deliver. And we can't hire fast enough. And we are paying 50% above the market. Can you believe that? In a nation of 1 billion people where God knows how many are unemployed. So therefore, the biggest challenge in India is really being able to manage people in any business. If you want to scale, you need to build people skills. If you need to build people skills, you need to know how to train, you need to know how to recruit, you need to know how to mentor. And a significant time of our management really today is not into running the company. We don't run the company, actually. Most of the people who report to us do. It's really in teaching these people, building the mentoring skills, and teaching them how to do it. To give you an example, the person that you see in this picture, and there are quite a few of these in our company, this guy was hired as a driver, became an operational controller, which is he heads a hub where multiple delivery vehicles go out in about 6 to 9 months he joined us because he's a smart guy working hard. He's now a training lead in Bangalore. He trains the entire Bangalore workforce of about 200 people, and this in the space of about 15 months. A customer service head in Bangalore is a 20-year-old who was hired as a driver. But it's probably the best customer service head that I have seen for a long time to come. And if I were to hire for that position from outside, it would cost me about 10 times what we are paying him today. In fact, he was very surprised when we went and gave him an increase, because he couldn't believe why we were giving him an increase. And we said, we are underpaying you compared to what you're delivering today. So the ability in India, you have talent, but the talent is not in the places that you're looking for, unfortunately. So you need to be able to figure out how to work with the talent that you have, how to mentor that, how to give them the skills, how to give them the processes to be able to build the company. The third thing, and this is something which has been a pet peeve of mine for a long time, most startups believe that because they're growing fast, because they are unorganized, because they are small, because things are chaotic, processes are for large companies. Nothing is farther from the truth, and particularly in the Indian context. My belief is that unless you measure, and which you can only if you have a process, you don't know what's happening in the business. Unless you don't know what's happening in the business, you can't improve. And if you can't improve, you're dead in the long run. So to again quote an example from our business, we have a process of how our pickers pick from the shelf. We have a process of how they pack. We have a process of how the packed the crates are loaded onto the vehicle. We have a process of how the large vehicle is unloaded at the hub. We have a process of how the crates which are unloaded in the vehicle is loaded onto a delivery vehicle. We have a process of how the unloading happens at the customer's place. We have a process of how he delivers to the customer. We have a process of how he brings it back. So the fact is that it's easy to write down processes, but unless you can actually make sure that every part of your business you can write down written process, measure it, you will not be able to deliver consistent quality. And if you can't deliver consistent quality, you're not delivering a brand, and you're not going to build a brand. The other thing which most people keep saying, India is very difficult to operate in, but uniquely, India also offers tremendous opportunities to innovate. And I've seen this again and again. We have found solutions to problems which have cost most people, hundreds of millions of dollars, equivalent businesses operating elsewhere in the world. And I think that's because if you're willing to experiment, if you're willing to innovate, if you're willing to listen to within your organization and outside, and willing to seek help, there are 100 people in India to give advice. It's your job to figure out whom to listen to and what to pick. And if you can do that, I think it's very easy to innovate. Some of these problems I think seem logical, and it's very easy. Okay, if I want to deliver 100% fill rate, let's stock more. But if you stock more, you have more wastage, your costs go up, you can't afford it. So eventually, you need a bigger warehouse, and the whole business spirals out of control. So how do you do it? So what do? You say, okay, fine, I will carry a lesser range. If you carry a lesser range, customer is not happy. So therefore, you need to strike a balance between what the customer wants and what you can deliver, and offer an experience which is better than what somebody else offers. And I think that is possible to do time and again in the Indian context. One last word. Entrepreneurship is a tough business, and I think I've seen that what appears overnight success is usually about 10 years in the making. So enjoy the ride. All the best for all aspiring entrepreneurs, and thank you very much.